Now that we've seen how to retrieve data from a database, let's see how we add it in. So you would use this, for example, if someone's signing up to your website. Once they've signed up successfully, you'll want to add their username and their password to your database so that they can log in later on as well. So we do this in a similar way to how we retrieved the data. We start off with a query, and then we're going to write some MySQL, and that's going to insert the data that we need. So as before, it's fairly straightforward SQL. It's insert into, so we're obviously inserting some data into a table, and then the table that we want to insert into is users. And then we put the names of the fields that we want to insert values into. And then we have a pair of parentheses, and inside these parentheses we're going to put the names of the fields that we want to include values for. So those two fields for us are email and password. Now you can just leave them like that, but it's a good habit to get into to surround them with those quotes there. It's essentially an acute accent, and for me it's next to the Z key on my keyboard. It's not quite a quote, but it's what we used to contain the names of fields in MySQL, and we also use it to contain the names of tables if you want to. Again, that will work with or without, but it is a good habit to get into. And then we put the values that we want to have for them. And again, these are in parentheses, but for values we use the normal single quotes. So I've already signed up to this. So let's have Kirsten at kirstenpercival.co.uk as our next user. So I'm putting her in single quotes there. And then let's give her a decent password. There we go. She's much more secure than I am. So that's our query, that's our SQL. And then to run that query, we do it in the same way that we did before. So MySQL I_query, and then link and query. All right, that won't return anything in itself other than a success, but we will be able to see in phpMyAdmin that it's been added. So let's just save that and run it. And the results will be exactly the same, because this code that we've got here only returns the first item. We'll see how to return more than one item in the next video. So let's jump back into phpMyAdmin to see if this really has worked. A quick way to get there, if you know the IP address of your database, is to start typing the IP address. So for us it's 79.170.44.125 and then /phpMyAdmin. And then that will take you straight to phpMyAdmin, and from there you can enter the username and password for the database itself. And that will get you in. Okay. So fingers crossed, we now have a new item of data in our users table, and there it is. Fantastic. So let's just add one more item. So let's put Tommy in here. He can be at gmail.com. And we'll give him probably the sort of password that he'll go for when he grows up. So let's refresh that. And there we go. So now we've got 3 items in our database. What if we want to update some of these? So say someone wants to change their email address or change their password. Well, that's actually pretty straightforward as well. So I'm just going to comment out that query to leave it in there, but we don't want to add those every time we run the script. So let's have a new query. And this is going to be an update query. So say we want to update my email address to something else, then we can have update and then the table name contained by the acute accents there. So we want to update the users table, and we want to set the email to, and then let's say I change my email address to robpercival80@gmail.com. Now, if I ran that query, that would update the email address of all of these to robpercival80@gmail.com, which is something we obviously do not want to do. And it's a very dangerous sort of a query to have, because if you code it wrong, you could lose all the data in your database. So we want to set a where instruction, which limits which rows of the table will be updated. So you can see my ID is 1, so we can limit that to where ID is equal to 1. And that will only update the users table for my particular row. And what I like doing is something that is kind of an extra safety net, that whenever you're doing an update, you should always put a limit at the end. And what that does is simply limits the number of rows that it will update. So if you're only expecting one user to be updated, then put limit 1 at the end. And that just saves you from writing a piece of bad code or making a mistake, which then updates the whole of your database and loses you a bunch of data, which is definitely something you want to avoid. All right, so let's have a look. Okay, you can see that actually worked straight away, because that first result that's returned been changed from rob@robpercival.co.uk to robpercival80@gmail.com. But if we have a look in the database on phpMyAdmin as well, you can see that that's updated there. Great. Here's a mini challenge for you then. Can you change my password to something rather more secure than that, but instead of using the ID in the where, I'd like you to use my email address. Go for it. All right, hope you managed that. So let's just get rid of all of this. Obviously the first bit stays the same, update users, and this time we want to set the password equal to, and then let's just pick some random string. There we go. In single quotes, of course. And we want to do that this time where email is equal to, and then robpercival80@gmail.com. And because this is a string, we need to put it in single quotes. When we had ID equals 1, 1 is not a string here, it's stored as an integer, so we didn't need quotes. But for a string, you do. And just to be safe, we'll pop limit 1 on the end. Okay, let's take a look. Brilliant. That's updated the password as well. Great. So that's how we insert and update data in our database. In the next video, we'll see how we can return more than one result from a query, and also how we can do more advanced queries that allow us to select particular columns from our database and to be more fussy about the sort of users that get selected as well. See you there.